Good afternoon, guys. My name is Cassandra Vera. I completed my assessment with my client. We'll call him Tyler. He's 3.5 years old and currently lives with his mother and his father. He is an only child right now, but is expecting to have a younger sibling come into his life within the next 2 months. So that was really interesting for me because I was able to see the way that it affected him. You know, if his behavior changed at school, if it changed with his parents, if it changed with, the social groups that he had begun to form. So I thought that that was really interesting because I was able to actually witness firsthand how these changes were happening and if this affected his developmental growth. I also got to get a little bit more background by completing my biopsychosocial assessment and seeing, how these were interacting together with this change that was happening and if it was affecting his behavior. So it provided a lot of extra information. I think that understanding the development of children at this age in the early childhood is really beneficial to the field of social work because I think the more we know, the more change we can provide. Children at this young age are very open to suggestion and to being led down any path that you want to lead them on. And I think that as social workers, it is our job to provide them with the right kind of resources and build them up and encourage their growth and encourage their development. I mean, if we see that certain children are falling behind in certain areas of development, we can create different assessments or provide more resources that can build them up so that we don't see these deficits happening in this age group or generation as they continue on. I think that if we focus on development now, it'll really help for future, in the future for when they're older and helping them find jobs and providing stable family lives and providing good relationships with others. I think that it's really beneficial right now for us to understand this development, and I think it'll only help the field of social work to learn more about this specific age group and other young child age groups. So I think that would be really interesting. I really liked using the ASQ because I was reading on the website that they've changed it over since they first started with it. And I thought that that was really interesting because, you get children from the 1970s who don't have technology, who can't just play a game on their phone and, pick up the fine motor skills that back then took them a longer time to develop. So I think it's really interesting comparing the initial ASQs that we got to what we have now. Especially with my client, I noticed that his fine motor skills were very well. He was able to copy pictures, he was able to, draw lines, he was able to even begin writing his name. So that was really interesting for me because a lot of those things, you can see on a tablet. You see children using the stylus to trace patterns or to answer questions. So they kind of have to get used to those little detailed activities. Whereas his gross motor skills, that was a little bit more delayed. I did see more of an issue with, walking upstairs. Instead of doing 1 foot and then the other, he was constantly doing, 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, and even jumping from one place to the next. I mean, he had issues with little things like gross motor skills, which I think would be different from children that were in the 1970s. I mean, they could only go outside and play. They didn't have the option, to pull out a phone and play on games that way. And I think, my client was able to do that now. So I was able to see how that change had occurred, which I thought was really interesting because that's comparing time. We see the children back then to the children now, and it was really interesting to see that way had developed. I think that the ASQ is a good tool for the Southwest region, but I also think that there are a couple issues with it. I mean, the Southwest, majority of the time in those states, you're going to hear that people are living in poverty or come from low-income families, things of that nature. So I think that the ASQ just kind of thinks that children are going to be following the paths that they need to get those developmental stages that they need. And children that are 3.5 aren't holding a pencil like an adult. Unless they're in school. And if they are, I think teachers are more focused on learning how to get them to write in the first place instead of focusing on how they hold pencils. So I think little things like that in lower income states and poverty-stricken states, it's going to be harder to meet those levels and can in turn cause children to feel that they are delayed, which, as was mentioned in the book, will stick with them for a long time. So I think it will be beneficial to provide like a ground foundation, but it shouldn't be used as an exact foundation. So I think it's helpful, but at the same time, I think that there might be a more beneficial assistance to be provided for the Southwest. From this experience, I actually learned a lot. I have a daughter, she's 3 years old, so it was really interesting for me to see the difference between a 3.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. at her daycare, I completed the same assessment, so I found it really interesting and it was really beneficial to see the differences in the development. So I really enjoyed this assessment and this assignment itself. I thought it was all really beneficial. So I hope that you guys have found this to be beneficial as well, and I thank you for watching. Bye.